Hi, Paul Schulte. It's Good News Planet. I'm going to emphasize the planet part because we're going to talk about China today. We're talking to Paul Schulte. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good morning, sir. Yes, well done. All good here in Singapore.
There he goes. Paul's in Singapore, born in LA, though. But this Paul is a very interesting man, and I thank him for taking a little moment here to speak with us. He's an educator. He's a businessman. He's analyzed major corporations, China and not in China, and as a teacher, and has written a book called The Race for 5G Supremacy, Why China is Surging, Where Millennials Struggle and How America Can Prevail. Actually, a couple minutes before this, a friend of mine, Dr. Thole, since I've been also, my audience knows, been involved with China for 6 years, because the Chinese put me in business by asking me to help represent the World Journal, which is the largest newspaper chain here in America, also I think the third in Taiwan. So I've been involved with multicultural, and then I got very involved with China, helped bring rock and roll music into China, and I've done maybe 500 events, all kinds of things for China. And so he's just sent me something about Shenzhen, and about how Shenzhen, and I've been in China, is for the millennials, actually. It's amazing. I'm going to send it to you. A Bloomberg video on how they have progressed so much in 40 years. And so if you could give us some idea, I mean, people really don't fully understand, I don't think, what China is about. Or maybe they don't understand what America is about, or maybe we don't understand why China and America have to have even an argument together. We work together in many respects. You tell us.
Yeah. So if you look at the 50s and 60s in America, there was really a tremendous, catapulting in all technological areas in America, and it was a public-private partnership in terms of the national highway system, the telecommunication system, the national freeway system, the Apollo program, and this really created, not only an awesome infrastructure, but it created millions and millions of jobs. And so, in many ways, we look at America after the war, and especially China's looked very carefully at Germany in the post-World War II reconstruction. And China basically copied a lot of this and has done, in the last 15 years, what America and Germany did in the 50s and 60s in sort of creating their infrastructure. And but China has been able to do this with a digital infrastructure, with 5G, with AI, with payments and e-commerce and super apps. And all of these super apps are now basically turned themselves into multi-channel lifestyle, infrastructure that a lot of the new technology can be glued onto. And so this is why China's, making progress in leaps and bounds in terms of smart cities. And you're seeing this probably no better than in Shenzhen. I believe Shenzhen is going to be really the first city in the world that's going to be a truly smart city.
In this Bloomberg video, it started saying how even ecologically friendly, we don't need fireworks anymore. We can just use, in Shenzhen, they're using lights to light up the sky and to make it look very pretty and so on and so forth. It doesn't hurt, though, if you're a country. First of all, I'm a John Lennonist. I'll tell it straight out. I'm a one world guy, and I think we should all work together, because there's a lot of people that aren't living a nice life, can't get a glass of water, and all those kinds of realities worldwide. If we take the bigger picture, and that's the shot from the moon. And so there was no boundaries and no borders, of which we all know, or not everybody knows, it's segregation at its highest degree. We divided the world into different segments and so on. But
indeed,
and it's troublesome in many respects, even to the respect of war. And so in that, we did break up, have this area that they call China, right? It's a big area. But they have 3 times, if you wanted to go competitively thinking, they got 3 times the amount of people. If you got a lot of people, that means a lot of people can buy stuff. Is that right? And then if they were farmers and now they're a little bit more savvy in business and they're making a little more money, they have more opportunities to buy things. So what do you think is that scenario? How does that play out? It's a big country.
Well, yeah, that's right. And so China's middle class is basically the same size as the entire United States or the European Union. China's middle class is around 350, 400 million people. So we're not even talking about sort of a lower income group of agricultural, subsistence farmers moving into urban areas. We're talking about a solid middle class that's got some, pretty serious spending power and tremendous amounts of savings. So yeah, so even the middle class is the same size as the U.S. entire population.
I think I heard you tell me if you think this is right, that more people speak English in China than speak English in America.
That's about right. I would say that's also about right. I think that's right, and I think and China's turning out about 10 times more engineers right now than America is, as well, right? So the educational advantage here is tilting in China's favor.
So in your book now, let's talk about the book, because it's an important book. You have a lot of acclaim for it, and I think that's wonderful, because we do need more understanding than arguing about things that we don't have any idea of. What is the book? How did you structure the book, and why did you create this book?
Well, so I have a friend who is a millennial. He's 30, and we were great friends, and we talked all the time. And he's somebody I met through the university in Hong Kong, and he ended up working for Accenture, and he worked for AT&T, and he worked for Verizon, and he worked for AT&T in Mexico. But he kept on telling me that, Paul, something's wrong here. Something is very wrong with what's happening in the way that these guys are trying to, articulate and roll out 5G, the way that they treat millennials, the way that I get treated in the workforce. And so I said, we need to write about this. And we ended up thinking about writing about a book about how America could have a new type of Apollo program technologically. And then when we thought about it, and this was a couple of years ago, before the topic I'm going to bring up has become au courant in the last 12 months. There is a crisis in millennial mental health. There is a crisis of anxiety and depression and not fitting in, and there's kind of an FU to the whole culture of the Fortune 100. And so these millennials are finding themselves unwelcome, or actually finding their relationship to the Fortune 100 antagonistic. And so a lot of the book backtracked on what can we have in terms of a social Apollo program to deal with a lot of the issues that are facing millennials right now, that are social and emotional and mental, and not just the technological issues. So that's what the book is about.
So let me ask you, why is a millennial feel uncomfortable with IBM, Johnson & Johnson, the big corporations? For what reason do you think?
Okay, so let me just give you a quick timeline of what the millennial has gone through since that millennial turned essentially 15 years old. 1997, was the introduction of OxyContin. 1999 was Columbine. 2001 was the 9/11. 2003 was the Iraq War. 2005 was Hurricane Katrina. 2007 was the GFC. They have lost confidence in institutions, the Fortune 100, governmental institutions, the Central Bank of the United States. These guys don't trust institutional frameworks. That's fundamentally the starting point. And when I tell you all the things that they've gone through a terrible crisis of being potentially shot at and killed in their high school, of climate catastrophe, of hundreds of thousands of millennials coming back from the Iraq War, which is the longest war in American history, damaged, PTSD, alcohol and drug addiction. Everyone who you talk to who's a millennial knows somebody in prison, and they know somebody who's addicted to opioids. What did we give these people?
So with the book, I want to be clear see if I understand. We have China over here. We have millennials over here. Why are you putting those two together? How does China fit into what we're talking about?
Well, that's right. So then what happened was my co-author went to Shanghai, and he created the company in Shanghai. And then we asked ourselves, as we were looking at these issues in America, do we see these issues in China? There is no addiction problem in China. There is no crime in China. There is no gun violence in China because guns are illegal. There's no addiction problem because it's impossible to get drugs. China doesn't have any wars. Right? China, one of the number one or number two agenda items on the central government's 5-year plan is climate change. And so what you have there is a bunch of highly functioning millennials who embrace their government, who embrace institutional frameworks, and who are contributing toward sort of positive direction for all of the large-scale infrastructure and centrally planned policy rollout that China's doing. And that is the contradistinction of the book, is really comparing American dysfunctionality and Chinese, pretty much on a roll at the moment. That's what the book is about, sir.
This is good. This is very interesting because in essence, I guess I will say that I don't want to say pro-China, but I'm pro-China. I'm pro everybody who can succeed and do well. I'm not pro if there's a dictator popping you in the head and beating you up. That, of course, is a concerning matter. But
are you talking about Trump? What are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, which place, right? All right, so I'm not happy about Tenement Square, and I'm not happy about Minnesota. But the thing is, there aren't tons of tenement squares you hear about. I mean, I'm 35 years into this Chinese thing, big time.
Me too. First trip to China, 1991.
So, with that, we brought rock and roll in there. I mean, I didn't go into China. I went into Hong Kong, because that's where it was the business side of China way back in the 80s. We called it China America. We had Joan Chen as the host spokesperson, Dr. Don Allfield and Jeff Barry, who did 200 million records, including Cheers and Leader of the Pack and everything. And we had big time people. And I looked at the, regular, nice, kind, loving people. I have more WeChat messages than anybody on my phone. The thing here, but why do we have to bash each other's country? What is the joy in beating people up? The basic, it seems to me, you tell me, because I keep saying this, everybody's all upset with China here in America, but meanwhile, all these big corporations, maybe this is it, all these corporations have all their business and they make all their products in China. You look at every product, made in China, made in China. Aren't we helping foster the growth of those countries as we did with Japan many, many years ago as well? We bought everything from made in Japan, How does this play out? Because it seems to me it's the people in the country clubs that are here in America that are keeping China in business, who are running these.
That's a very good point. I think what's going on is that as long as China sort of had a passenger side role, even sitting in the back seat and being able to provide cheap products for American homes in a disinflationary manner, that was fine. But then when you find out that in space, in quantum communications technology, China's advancing, China's ahead. In 5G, China's ahead. In all of these super apps, China's ahead. In all of the payments and e-commerce throughout the Silk Road, down to Southeast Asia, across to the Middle East, across to Istanbul, and even into Europe, China's ahead. America woke up a couple of years ago and realized, oh my God, China's pulling ahead of us, and this is not acceptable to the preeminent imperial power globally. And so, what imperial powers do is they need to slow down or stop their competitor in order to maintain their prime position. This is the role of hegemons throughout history.
There's this thing called money. Now, money is a very powerful thing, right? So, for example, I'm down in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, and I get on this road over there, this one road that's gorgeous. It's been built, through this area that would take you to one part of Kingston to the other part of Jamaica. And I asked somebody, because we were making a show on business in the Caribbean, okay, with the ambassador. And so, and I said, who's paying for this? We talk logistics and things like that. He goes, oh yeah, the Chinese built this out for 2 weeks. So thank God, I think I heard, in their wisdom, and besides owning America, they have $3 trillion that they put into over 100 countries. Is that where does that, how does that happen? I mean, you're my friend if you give our country a lot of money, right?
Well, and that's what, I worked with the World Bank and the IMF in the 90s in Indonesia, and I saw with my own eyes how the IMF and the World Bank were a tool of, hegemonic, advancement, and that's the way it was in those decades. And China's no different, and so China has a tendency to stay out of politics, which is probably a smart thing. And so, yeah, so right now, Alibaba and Tencent's payments and e-commerce systems are operating in more than 50 countries, and this scares the hell out of the US. And Huawei's 5G networks are operating in, every single country in Africa, except I think 2, in every major country in South America, in most of the countries in Southeast Asia. And this also scares America.
But they literally loan. I use the word loan. I don't think they give. It's tough to get a give from working with the Chinese for all these years. It's a loan, and they want return on ROI. They want return on their investments. But they give over 100 countries money. They give them lots of money. Is that right? I mean, does that play?
Well, that's right, exactly. And of course, it's trade finance. Of course, it's trade finance. So the countries are paying for Chinese, goods and services where there's a huge amount of surplus capacity in China that they want to export, and the government helps these companies export surplus capacity of, whatever, cable, cement, telecommunications equipment, steel, all of this industrial stuff that China basically finished building out China. And so now they're taking this capacity overseas to countries, and they're subsidizing it with government loans. This is how the U.S. built up its international infrastructure build out in the 50s and 60s and 70s through Chase Manhattan Bank and the World Bank and the IMF. I worked at the White House, under Reagan, and I saw that with my own eyes as well. This is what countries do.
And they're doing it well right now.
I would say China's coming up against some roadblocks of early, very early sort of, their own hegemonic challenges, which is basically a government changes and said, I don't know what the last prime minister told you, but I'm the new prime minister and I want X. I want a payoff. I want a better deal. I want to renegotiate this land deal. And so you have to renegotiate all over again. And this, pisses off, people who paid a lot of money, right, for something before. And so when you get government changes, new governments want new deals.
Yeah, that I've seen that in action. Sometimes you sign. Well, I learned it. First of all, this was an interesting one. Someone in Beijing, they told me, do you know what PRC stands for? Personal relationships and cash.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, amen, brother. Amen. Yeah.
So, and there is a lot of concerning things. But let's get back to the millennials, because I'm trying to learn in essence, because the millennials are our future. Okay, we are those old codgers. Our old codgers, we got our, we'll fight the old way because we don't know how to. Maybe we are the Fortune 100. Maybe we are the ones with our IRAs in the Fortune 100, and maybe the part of that is in NASDAQ. But we're sort of like, we like to use those big names because they've proven to us over the years that they could, IBM has proven, 10 times that they can stay in the game, right? And so on and so forth. Yep. But the new people who are going to then make a Zoom investment or an Uber investment, because that's their thing. They're not going to take they're not going to take a Greyhound bus. It's a different lifestyle. But how do we help the millennials? I appreciate your concern that they've gone through a lot, and that's very kind of you. I know you're a professor in 5 different continents. You've helped, I'm sure, a lot of young people learn about the world around them. What are some of the suggestions? If we had a 30-year-old there or so learning right now how to deal with the world in the world of business, what would you say?
Yeah, so we have 24 exercises in the book that people can sit down with each other, with younger people and older people, both in terms of the home and also in the office space. But generally, if we step back, what we've got here is basically the older people have got to, whatever Gen X and boomers have got to realize, and they have to understand what millennials have gone through, and for God's sakes to stop telling us that millennials are entitled and spoiled and have helicopter parents. Well, you know what? Maybe they have helicopter parents for a very good reason, because they've been through so much trauma with, as I mentioned, all this opioid addiction, school shootings, endless, 450 school shootings in a 10-year period, 9/11, the Iraq War, all of the damage that's been done to living, never mind dead, soldiers in the Middle East wars is tremendous psychic damage to that generation. The GFC, and the ecological damage from climate change makes them anxious, depressed, and rageful. And this needs to be appreciated, for God's sakes, from Gen X and from boomers, and to treat them with a hell of a lot more respect than what they get. And if that means, offering them, a lot of leeway, a lot of rope, for God's sakes, do it. But what we see is Gen Xers and boomers who are actually resentful toward millennials because they think millennials are entitled snots. And that is just a total non-starter based upon all the facts that I have just laid out.
Uh-huh. A millennial is what age do you
1980 to 1998. So right, so the first millennials just turned 40.
Uh-huh.
So 40 down to essentially 20.
I got a millennial.
I'm only 29, so I'm also a millennial as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not I got a daughter who's a millennial. But she went through that, but somehow I don't know why she seems to be kind of solid with it all. But she's a psychologist, maybe that's why. I don't know. But yeah, well, this is very interesting that and that you put those two together, the China and the millennials together. I think that's a very wise approach. And
yeah, and then when you look at the way that the Chinese see their government and they see the confidence in institutions, this is why these super apps, have traction in China, because the Chinese are a lot more relaxed with the way that and how they believe their data is going to be used. Americans and people in the West are very cynical toward government and institutions because of the way that people were shafted during the GFC. China didn't have a GFC. And so there's a lot more confidence and a willingness of Chinese to give over their data to receive a lot of great apps.
That's big. That's a very big observation. This is massive, that observation, because everybody is freaking out, data mining, data this, data that. I mean, Facebook, they're all on the hot seat as a result of that. And, government trying to take them down on that one. That's very important, because if you feel comfortable with your data, that it's not going to be exploited, you could by far grow. That's a really interesting point. You're a smart guy, Mr. Paul. All right. Well, that's a good one. Give me two more things out of you have 24 things in the book. Give me two more thoughts here.
Bringing older people together and younger people together in the workforce on Friday afternoon, and say, tell me what you learned. Pizza lunch. Get this and do a pizza lunch every Friday afternoon. Let people talk to each other. Let millennials tell their nightmare stories of how they were treated during interviews. The interview process is a 50-year-old interview process. Why are people still treating HR departments like they're some 50-year-old dinosaur entity? Change the way that you recruit. Change the way that you retain employees. Ask yourself why you can't keep people in your organization. There's a problem, and have a dialogue, have a conversation with these guys. Listen to them, listen to the men and women.
What is this? Did you write the Encyclopedia Britannica in about 15 editions? You got a ton of stuff in this. How'd you squish this all into? How big is this book? 4,000 pages?
Oh, no. It's about it's about 230 pages, and we have some really fun laid out boxes, which are the exercises, and then we have some solutions for America, which is what America can do. And I think Biden's administration is going to be a lot better in terms of the public-private. If you don't have a public-private way to create, all countries need to create new rails. We need to have a new railroad system, but it's a digital one. It's digital rails. And if you're trying to do a digital superhighway or a digital Apollo program or a digital railroad system, you've got to get government involvement. The private sector cannot do it itself. And so China's way ahead, right? China's, already like 6 years ahead of the US. And so maybe, with the Democratic administration, you have greater confidence in the institutions of government to have a more of a coherent dialogue with the private sector. So fingers crossed on that.
This guy's a pretty wild guy. You're one wild guy. And today's just so happens to be January 6th. We'll see what happens on January 7th here in America.
I know, right? Yeah. Now we have a Democratic Congress, a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate.
I think they're thinking of dissolving both the Democratic and the Republican Party. I think that's what's going to come out of today, and any other party. I think the Congress is going to get fired. I think the Senate's going to get to close the whole shop.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress in this country. A lot of stress, too much stress. In addition to the most important stress is a pandemic. They're fighting
the pandemic. Yeah, the pandemic.
Well, we got people dying.
China had a 2-month lockdown. I'm in Singapore. I had to have a 2-month lockdown. I didn't leave my home for 2 months, basically, except to go to the store. Singapore today has 0 cases. Taiwan has pretty much 0 cases. China has 0 cases. Right? If you have a communitarian approach to a quarantine, Singapore's back to normal. China's back to normal. Taiwan's back to normal. New Zealand's back to normal.
I hear you. Well, let me ask you, we could talk longer. I'm a very interesting guy you are. I'm a last, and you probably have more interviews. Let me ask you one last question. The book is called The Race for 5G Supremacy, Why China is Surging, Where Millennials Struggle, and How America Can Prevail. And it sounds to me like a lot more than that in this book as well. And this is definitely a book that should be in colleges and high schools, because the earlier people learn more, the better off we'll all be. So let me ask you, we're involved with peace, the International Day of Peace, okay? And even China was involved with it, and Taiwan and so on. The United Nations International Day of Peace. All the countries, 193, agreed to a day of peace. Actually, it goes back to 1984. And we do some events and been supporting that for about 20 years now, with the concerts in Times Square, Central Park, and all around the world. So I ask a lot of people, I'm interested in your respect. Paul Schulte, what does peace mean for you?
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful question. To me, peace means there's one other word that I like to equate to peace. It's dignity. And when countries can treat other countries with dignity, you'll get along a hell of a lot better. But when you come across as a country which is entitled, which is essentially racist, which is has an element of supremacy to it, and where you dehumanize your neighbor rather than offering them dignity, you sacrifice peace.
Probably 2,000 asks that I have done for what does peace mean today. No one's hit the dignity button. And I am so much on top of that and so much in belief of that. Thank you very much for sharing that. I agree with you. Respect towards each other.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Paul. Good job.
Okay, you're so welcome. Have a great. Bye.
Bye-bye.